Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cheat, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name's Hayden.
And this week we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Ofsted report cards. They've dropped, they're here to stay. There's a few changes Ofsted have made. We're going to go through all of them and discuss why, fundamentally, we don't think that these go far enough. Right, here we go again. Talking about Ofsted. Let's get into it because it's something we covered a lot in several points in our podcast career, let's call it,
Wow.
where we like to talk about Ofsted. And I just get annoyed. It really just frustrates me because I feel like teaching and education in our schools and our children absolutely deserve some kind of independent body that can come in and assess schools and just make sure they're getting what they need.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like this whole system is completely broken, doesn't really work whatsoever, just strikes fear, anxiety, worry across the board in so many schools. And we've lived it. We know that's true.
Yep.
It's not just us looking and going, we don't like being judged. No. We are absolutely fine. And we know and understand that we need to be held to the highest standards as educators. But the way Ofsted runs, it's so frustrating. And the reason I'm annoyed now more than ever is because obviously the report cards are being rolled out. They were first mentioned a few months ago. We did a podcast episode about it. And it just feels to me as if at no point do any of these changes actually seem to be addressing the problems that school staff mention. And it feels as if everything that they're implementing now or introducing is just the same thing repackaged with a different word maybe at the top or a different line saying how they care so much about schools without it actually really making an impact whatsoever. And I think that's where I just wanted to start off by saying I am all for the reform of Ofsted and things changing, and I want that to happen. And it frustrates me that I feel like every time Ofsted do something or say something, it's just more of the same, and it feels like we're not being listened to whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the frustrating bit. I think we're going to go through some changes. I think on the whole, from the parents' perspective, like we can talk about some of the changes being quite positive, I think. But the biggest, like you said, the biggest problem is, and I even feel like they tried to listen to the feedback from the first, when they brought this out months ago and we reviewed it and we said a few things, like our opinions. I feel like it feels like they've listened to a few of those things, but just whilst ignoring the big one. It's like, oh yeah, oh guys, sorry, but these are all little things. As teachers all screaming like, what about the crippling pressure it puts on us? What was that? It's like they can't hear that bit. They didn't hear that bit. It's like that's the bit that feels like hasn't changed. Oh, the fundamental issue we had with it in the first place, the big one. Yeah, no.
How about we just change the word outstanding to exemplary?
Yeah, let's start there, shall we?
So let's just go through some of these changes and let's just dive into them so we're all aware of actually what is happening, what they're doing, what we need to know. And I just want to give a big shout out to Schools Week.
Yeah.
My goodness me, Schools Week's a website, has articles about what's going on in the world of education. I find myself on it multiple times a week, just keeping up with things. Amazing journalism, really, really useful. I think if you're a teacher or anyone in education and you don't know about Schools Week, my goodness me, just jump on there because short, sharp, full of information is what we're going to be using today for a lot of what we're talking about. So first thing, the first headline thing, and I did a Instagram reel about this, was the fact that they are renaming the grading system again. So let's just go back initially. What used to happen a year or two ago is a school would be judged by Ofsted and at the end would get a one-word judgment for the whole school. I think we all agreed that was a bit daft. It's hard to compare then a good school with a good school with a good school with a good school. They're all obviously very different. So that was kind of like a bad way, I think, of judging schools. So what they did initially, they said, okay, cool, we're not going to do one-word judgments of schools, but we do still have to judge different areas of your school. For example, the teaching and learning. For example, the inclusion. And we're going to get into all those different categories in a minute. So they initially had said, okay, cool, we're going to rename them. And we made a joke about this, how it's not very different. And they said, we're going to have from the top, what used to be outstanding down to what used to be requires improvement and even inadequate. The new scheme was going to be this, the new way of doing it. Exemplary at the top, strong, secure, attention needed, and then causing concern. So what Ofsted have done is, I think this is what you alluded to earlier about them listening, right?
Yeah.
So they listened to people potentially and they said, okay, look, fine, we're listening to you educators. We're hearing what you're saying. We know it's really stressful and it's high stakes and leaders are getting really anxious about it. We're going to change the words again. So here's what they've done. They've changed. Let's go through one at a time. I want to get your opinion on this.
So I'll say the original one. You say the new one, right?
Okay, go on.
So exemplary
is now exceptional.
Need a necessary change.
We've gone from outstanding to exemplary to exceptional.
Yeah.
What a waste of time.
I know. That just seems mad. The next one, it was strong.
That's not enough. It's now strong standard.
Strong standard.
Yep.
Okay. This is the big one I thought. Well, no, actually, there's a big one, but this is an important one. Secure.
Okay, and this was said to be quite confusing.
Yeah,
secure.
Apparently.
They changed it to expected standard.
Yeah.
So that it's in line with what we would say for the children.
Yeah, I actually think, as far as words go, I probably prefer expected standard over secure.
Yeah, sure.
Irrelevant, really.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But it's like, okay, if I had to pick between the two, I probably would pick that one. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
The next one down was attention needed.
Well, it's now. This is so funny. I've not really realised how funny this is. They've changed it from, say again,
attention needed
to needs attention.
Yeah, fair play.
Why have they done that?
Don't want to be shown to keep them the same, Dylan.
Why have they
And the
done
last
that?
one, and a bit of context for this one, because professionals and parents were a bit concerned about the terminology of the previous one, which was causing concern. They were like, it's a bit too negative, it's not very nice. So they've changed causing concern to
urgent improvement.
Yes, so it's gone from, I'm going to do it sort of in an audio way. It's gone from, a bit of causing concern, urgent improvement. Yeah. This is terrible.
No.
Is that better?
Here's what gets me about this. This is what sums it up. I think the annoyance of school staff and educators, because Ofsted say, they say, right? Oh, okay, look, causing concern. Okay, look, we don't want to give providers that judgment because it's unnecessarily harsh.
Yeah.
Clearly, okay, we can agree. Okay, we're fine. And it's like, wow, Ofsted are listening. They're saying that words do matter, and they do matter in this case. And they're saying causing concern is bad. Wow, Ofsted they've finally realised that that is a bad thing to do, and they're gonna improve it. They chose something worse. They chose something more alarming. They were like, yeah, causing concern.
Funny.
We don't want to do that to our poor providers.
Yeah.
So instead of saying it's causing, we're going to say urgent improvement. So it's like they've accepted us saying, words matter. You need to be careful in the way you say things. They've gone, yeah, that's true. Let's make it worse.
Yes, I know, literally. It really cracked me up when I first saw that. I thought, surely not. They must have a reason behind it. Maybe they were just doubling down. They were like, yeah, it should be. The bad one should be bad because it's bad. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's what they're doing. But it certainly sounded softer to me to say, I was just causing. If someone said that to me, I'd be like, oh, okay, there's a bit of an issue here, but it's not that urgent. We can sort it out. Yeah. When you put the word urgent in it, it's like,
that sounds more urgent.
It's immediately right now terrible as terrible as it can get. So bad that we urgently need to improve it. I'm like, all right, fair enough. That's where you want to go.
This is interesting. Schools Week ran a blind online survey asking readers to distinguish between the criteria for secure and strong descriptors, and on average, more than 3,000 respondents got 2 of the 5 wrong. So clearly there was a bit of a discrepancy there back when it was secure and strong.
Yeah,
they've tried to make it more clear, and do you know what? Fair enough. They've made efforts to make that more clear for people to understand. I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not going to sit here and say everything Ofsted ever do is bad, but to me the other one is insane. If they've accepted that causing concern can have a negative impact on the well-being of staff, and then changed it to something literally worse, I'm just like, okay, we can't win. We actually can't win. Are they doing this as a joke?
Yeah. So funny. Absolutely cracked me up. So that was the first of 8 points that we're going to go through. The second one, again from Schools Week, is core inspection areas reduced from 8 to 6. So this is something we had a massive discussion about when we first did our episode on when this was all released the first time. And I remember we actually said something along the lines of, some of these inspection areas, like you mentioned inclusion earlier, I'll go through it all 8 in a second. We were like, aren't they kind of the same thing, or at least similar enough to be banded into one? And it looks like they've clearly listened to similar feedback, and they have reduced it from 8 to 6. So I'm going to go through. I'll read the original 8 inspection areas that could be graded as the following grade, the grades we just talked about, urgent improvement perhaps, and then we'll talk about how some of them have been merged. So the original 8 were inclusion, curriculum, developing teaching, achievement, behaviour and attitudes, which is 1, attendance, personal development and well-being as 1, and leadership and governance as 1. So lots of like you said, I don't think we've never sat here and said Ofsted should be scrapped completely and there should be no accountability. So I don't have a problem with the idea of accountability, and obviously it makes sense to break it down into different areas as well. But I do think they missed a few tricks with that. It didn't really it was just a bit vague. I thought some of those like that.
Well, we said it straight away, like curriculum and teaching. They are one and the same, right? It is nice to see that Ofsted have gone, do you know what? We don't need these 8 categories anymore. We can just go down to 6. And actually, curriculum and teaching, we can put it into 1. Because remember, we said if we're having developing teaching as its own standalone thing that's being judged against, we can see how that would become detrimental to staff wellbeing, because suddenly imagine a situation where a report card comes back, everything's in the Nando scale green, right? But the only thing that's orange is developing teaching.
Yeah.
And you just know for a fact in the wrong school, the wrong environment, in a toxic school, teachers will have that on their back constantly for the next few years. Oh, that's what's letting us down. That's the developing teaching. The teaching is bad. Right, teachers, we need to do this, we need to do that. I can just see it being a way of pointing fingers. So it's nice that it's kind of merged, I think.
I would, if I worked in that school and that happened, I would constantly be referring to myself as a spicy teacher, referring to the Nando scale until they just stopped talking to me. I think that's the only way you could battle that off. Do you know what I mean? Was I a bit too spicy? Was I extra hot,
baby?
Was I extra hot when I was teaching?
A little more lemon and herb. Okay. A little bit more lemon and herb,
and then
please.
eventually leave me alone, I think, because they dismiss it.
What I found really, 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 really interesting, and I'm not sure how I feel about this, is that they also then put together behaviour with attendance.
Yeah.
So they put those together, and I guess my problem with that is I feel like it's putting them in the same boat as if they're the same thing, and as if attendance is a symptom of behavior. And I do think they're very, very separate things, and I think they have very, very different reasons as to why one might be good or bad. And I think lumping them into one is kind of detrimental. If you've got a school with poor attendance, it doesn't necessarily mean behaviour's bad.
No.
So I do just find that odd. And I don't know, I can't remember what we said in previous episodes, etc. Maybe we said, oh, it would be good if they were together. But having now kind of gone into a bit more detail about the attendance crisis and behaviour, etc., it does strike me as slightly odd that we're going to be judging them both as one thing.
I guess what I can imagine, I was trying to think, like, what is their line of thinking with this? Because they've obviously done it for a reason. And I guess they're trying to say poor attendance is a behaviour. Like I can imagine they're really loosely linking it to it's the behaviour of the child, whether they're coming to school or not.
It's
insane because to me behaviour is such a distinguished part of school life that's nothing to do with attendance. Yeah, that's why it's insane to me. Because I'm like, I can understand that line of thinking, but there is something called behaviour policies and like behaviour in school that is nothing to do with attendance. So and the other side of this that surprised me a little bit is, do you remember when we first did this episode, they were banging on at the time, they still kind of are, about this attendance crisis and about how attendance needs to be better. I'm very surprised they then haven't kept that as a separate thing. So I'm like, they are like adamant that this is like behavior is this singularly really important thing. Of all these articles, attendance, is this such an important thing that it gets its own pedestal, and I'm like, now they've just banded it with behavior, which I think is also a massive thing. So I was a bit surprised to see they've done that.
I think there's a huge difference as well, I've got to say, between primary and secondary school. I think they're more interlinked in secondary school, but to me still separate enough in terms of children do have more autonomy as they get older as to whether they go into school or not, playing truant, etc. I can't honestly think of many children in my time as a primary school teacher that were persistently absent where it was because their behavior was bad. Or I can't really think of many schools that I've been in where the behavior policy and the attendance policy were that interlinked that they should be judged together.
Off the top of my head, I can only think of the opposite. I can think of children right now where I would say, the attendance was honestly almost nothing to do with them, because like they're tiny kids.
Exactly.
Obviously, they're not driving themselves to school. They're not even walking to school themselves. They're being taken to school by parents and carers, and it had nothing to do with their behaviour. Like it just literally had nothing to do with it. So it's a weird one to link it. Hopefully, there will be some clarity like within the report card, which we'll look at in a minute. Hopefully, when they are actually properly rolled out, there will be some clarity in the way they present that information. I don't know, that just separates behaviour and attendance a little bit in the way, even if it's in the paragraph or the descriptors, I don't know. But
I also hope that schools aren't judged on pure attendance data, rather what they're implementing to try and improve it. We talked about this previously. I don't see much about it. I don't know what it will be yet and how it's judged, etc. But it can't just be 92% attendance is this level on the spiciometer, 94% attendance is lemon and herb. It can't just be that, because a 94% attendance rate in one school and a 94% attendance rate in another school, one might be absolutely fantastic for that area and it's a huge improvement, and the other one might be negligence where actually you could be at 97, 98.
Well, I get a really good feeling, and you have to stick around in this episode to find out why, because it is point number 8 when we get to it at the bottom of the list. I have a really good feeling that they're actually going to be all right with that.
You trust Ofsted?
Oh, I don't think I want to say that on a podcast, Dylan, because it could get clipped. But I do feel like there are some positive changes in these 8 points.
That's good to have.
And I think the next one, so you got to listen into number 8, because that's where I kind of describe what it is.
What a good way of the hook, eh?
I know, I'm really getting the hang of this. But number 3 is, again, something I read it, I thought this is quite good, so I'd be interested to get your opinion. We've not talked about this before. It says school context narrative to run alongside the grades. So what that means is, I'll just read it. Ofsted had faced widespread calls from the sector to replace grading with narrative descriptions. This is something we mentioned even way back before this new Ofsted stuff came out. When we were talking about Ofsted in general, we were like, wouldn't it be better if we replaced like one word with maybe a sentence or even a paragraph, because you can get a bit more nuance in it about the school. And they were obviously pushed to do that with these because they were rightfully criticised that, oh, you're just using one word again, though.
Right.
Like, it's kind of the point we didn't really want one word.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't the fact it wasn't exemplary that made me annoyed by this system.
Yeah. So below the information where they can get the one word grading, ironically still, visitors will now be able to click on each of those judgment areas to reveal several paragraphs of narrative verdict, which I think is just a net win, in all honesty. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
You know what? It's good. I just listen. I don't want to be the person every single time who sits here going so. Yeah. Because my issue still is with the inconsistencies of the reports. The way that, you could still get an inspector come in who's a secondary school teacher who specialises in sixth form, who's coming to judge an infant school. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really care if I can see a paragraph of his opinion on how phonics should be taught. Right. Like, I think, sure, it's a good thing and there's more accountability and there's more context. And for parents, that's obviously a good thing. I don't see how this has remotely any impact on schools themselves. And if anything, makes it more anxiety ridden because you're about to get written up on absolutely everything as well. So it's great for people who want more information. Yeah. And it's hitting the box for parents, etc., who want to go in and find out about the school. But as an educator, I'd be thinking, oh my God, it's just another thing. It's just another hoop I've got to jump through because I know they're going to be writing up everything about it. That'll be available to parents as well. If anything increases that anxiety, doesn't actually take anything away from that. Sure, it's more clear, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, by the way. I'm just looking at it through the lens of educators. I'd be like, okay, cool. Yeah,
it's an interesting point about the anxiety it puts on teachers, because I do also think that really, like, this whole way through, I can even give my conclusion now. I don't really think that the anxiety levels have changed much of any of these things. I feel like it's no better. We sort of said this at the start of the episode. Yeah. But I'm trying to isolate this. I just think it's an improvement. Like, I feel like I would probably, if I've got to pick between just one word or one word with a couple of sentences, that it just explains a bit more as to why that one word has been chosen. I think I'd still choose that one.
Sure.
Probably.
For sure.
Even though that they don't really make me feel any different. I just think that's better.
Yeah, and that's kind of hopefully summarized by what I mean when I say, like, I'm like shrugging my shoulders at it. I'm like, yeah, okay. And it would be nice to see if you maybe got, I don't even know what the levels are now. There's so many words in my head. If you got an average dude as your level, it would be nice to see why maybe that you got that. And it would be nice to see the reasoning behind it. Because then maybe it's easier to either accept it and say, do you know what, fair enough. Or say, that is just nonsense though. Whereas beforehand, maybe it was more like, yeah, good. Yeah, chronology's off in history. It's like, is it what? Can you explain it more? Nah,
that's right. Can't explain it. You've been here for 3 days. Can you explain it? Nah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, it's from a school's point of view, okay.
I think you snuck in another little point there. It's probably a wider point, which I want you to address now, which is you said about not necessarily caring about this paragraph full stop, because if it is someone who's come in that you don't respect, basically, who's written this, because maybe it's a secondary school expert and they're coming in to judge a primary school.
Respect is harsh.
I don't know what the word is, but you clearly put that as a point of I might not, I might not even care about the paragraph based on who's written it and what their experience is and whether I can trust their opinion on it. Yep. Like, what can you go into that a bit more?
So what I'm saying here in more detail on a wider level is that if I were to put into a list of things I think Ofsted should be changing for the better, there's things that come before adding a paragraph for every evaluation. Right? So it's great. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, this change. I'm not saying, it's awful that you're adding in this paragraph information. But if that comes before actually ensuring that people who are judging schools have experience of being in that school setting themselves and are experts in that school setting, I don't care what you have to write about it at the end, because I'm listening to someone say how phonics should be taught in the early years from someone who spent 12 like their whole career, running a sixth form.
Yeah,
and maybe they were a sixth form history. They've got their expertise and they're fantastic at what they do. But I don't want someone to come and judge my school's phonics capability, honestly, from someone who's never taught phonics in their life.
Do you think they can't?
I don't think that they can't. I think they could. I think they could be trained up,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't necessarily trust that the training is fantastic. I don't think that it's consistent whatsoever. I think that the fact that you could have 5, and I would go as far to say 5 very different Ofsted inspections simply based on who they send to you.
Yeah.
I think that's not good enough. And I think there should be a minimum experience requirement level of people who come in and judge a setting of your experience in said setting. I just think it's insane that we just don't have that base level of just, there are enough Ofsted inspectors out there, I'm sure, that we could at least say, well, if you're being a primary school that's being judged, your lead inspector has experience in the setting of a primary school.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to me to be the bare minimum that we can accept. I'm obviously not saying that someone couldn't possibly do that job. All I'm saying is let's just have that as the base requirement.
Yeah, let's maximise the chances that it's going to be a success. I think because it's such a high stakes procedure, Ofsted in general, and an inspection, it is really, really high stakes, and it causes, like we said, a lot of anxiety for people. It needs to be right. Do you know what I mean?
Like, exactly.
Because you're right. The one of the biggest gripes of Ofsted over the last however long has been that one school got an Ofsted inspector in that said this, this, and this, and this other school got an Ofsted inspector in who said the complete opposite things and praised us for these things that school just got ripped apart for. And the inconsistency in the inspectors was a massive problem. So I do agree in terms of the hierarchy. We need to be prioritizing Ofsted inspectors being the absolute best they can possibly be at that job, and making sure they're in schools where they have proper expertise before we add in a paragraph. I do agree, but I'd like to think that we can do both. They should be just prioritizing both those. This is great for the parents, and it will also be even better if X happens, which is that.
I wouldn't even necessarily not do it now because the order's wrong. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying here is, from my point of view, is that there are more pressing things that I think should be changed sooner. Changing exemplary to outstanding to whatever else it was as a superlative for something fantastic is honestly, to me, so ridiculously pointless waste of time that I can't fathom that anyone's brain power was remotely put towards, what's the best word for that? Because no one on this planet at all was annoyed by outstanding being a thing instead of exemplary. No one. No one was saying, when they said one-word judgments, they were talking about the macro level of a school just being a good school. It's not very useful. That's why it's good, I think, that they got rid of that one-word judgment. But what we're seeing instead now is that schools, instead of having a big massive banner outside saying outstanding school, they're just doing that, but instead of saying outstanding once, they're saying outstanding 4 times. And all they'll do after this is say exemplary 4 times.
And do you know what they'll do?
Teaching is exemplary. Inclusion exemplary.
Exactly.
Like, it's just, it's not going to stop that from happening. And I just think, okay, we're getting to the root of why a lot of schools are annoyed and frustrated. It's not really fixing that.
I saw an argument that was saying that the banners will increase, and I was like, here we go. And they were like, because now there's 6 descriptors that they could get exemplary in, and they'll just put that one on it. It's like, we are exemplary at leadership. And it's like, the other ones were all, we're all, oh, hang on, let's go back to this scale. The other ones were all absolutely urgently terrible. But this one, and it really made me laugh, because I always thought, but these banners will stop being a thing now, because there's not just one word grade. It's like, no, they've got 6 to choose from.
I've already seen it, by the way, on schools that have had it since. Right, where instead of saying we're outstanding, they now have they list, because it was 4 still for a while. When they changed it, they got rid of the one-word judgments before any of this came in. So instead, the school would have leadership and management outstanding, teaching and learning outstanding, and it's I don't wherever the other 2
the
were.
report card on the banner.
Literally, and basically. It was just like harder to read, more of an eyesore, but still doing after banners.
At least with these narrative changes, we can now have banners that have the entire paragraph on it. At least, you know what, the small print will be there. I'd rather that.
Can you click on the banner? It just extends.
You
get the context.
It's just the person there employed all day to unfold it when someone goes, oh, I see
it's
more.
Just one massive QR code, and it goes to the dissertation of the school. Right, go on. Next one then. I'm interested by this. What are we talking about here? They mentioned about toolkits being tightened up. Bit of a backlash. Right. So Ofsted pledged earlier this year to publish toolkits for each evaluation area to take any mystery out of inspection. Clearly a good thing, by the way. I think you should know what you're being inspected on. So providers can be clear about what we will, and importantly, will not look at as Ofsted inspectors. These will orient around the expected standard grade, is what the watchdog said today. The likely 3 most common awarded grades, which are needs attention, expected standard, and strong standard, so the 3 in the middle,
Yeah.
will appear on one page. Then the 2 extremes, either urgent improvement or the exceptional, will sit on the following page. So clear guides, hopefully, for what each standard looks like.
Yeah.
Ofsted said the expected standard is in the middle of the page of the toolkit because this is what we would typically expect to see on inspections. It covers the statutory, professional, and non-statutory guidance that providers are already expected to follow. Meanwhile, the strong standard has tighter definitions and looks for evidence of practice to be consistent, embedded, and highly impactful. So overall, I'd want to get your thoughts overall on schools being given this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there'll be some people out there who say, well, you shouldn't need it. You should just you do what you do. Ofsted come in, and then if you're just working towards the curriculum. Why is this vital?
I've always thought that is complete insanity, by the way. The idea of like, we're going to come in and do this really high stakes judgment that you'll get every few years. Not going to tell you what on though. It's like, could you? Because we're just professionals, we're not kids. Like, this is, what do you think this is?
Yeah.
Or you might cheat. Cheat? What do you mean? What, implement good policies? Like, follow the guidance that you're looking for so you can see that we're good at what we do. Like, what are you talking about? It makes no sense.
It's the speed camera argument.
Yes.
It is the speed camera argument. It's always the same. It's just like, well, why is the speed camera there? The speed camera's not there as a way of racking up money, although in some cases it does. The speed camera's there to slow you down.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you need the speed camera to slow down. It's like, yeah, some people do.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then therefore they've slowed down, and that's good because then it's more safe. Same thing here. You got the things you're looking for. Oh, but then schools will just do it. Yeah.
That's the idea.
Literally.
Funnily enough, that is the point. When I was a kid, just the speed camera thing really made me laugh.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I remember questioning to my mum, I said, why do they put a warning sign before the speed camera? I could not get my head around it. I was like, you're not going to catch anyone doing that, are you? Everyone's going to slow down. That's stupid.
Yeah, they're not going to get there.
And my mum was like, that's the point. She was like, they want people to slow down. We don't actually want to catch people speeding. We don't want people to speed.
Right.
So the more signs you put in, the better, because people will start thinking about slowing down even earlier. And sometimes there's not even a speed camera. They just put the signs there to slow people down. And after I was like, oh God, that makes so much sense. And I do feel that exactly what you just said. I won't just regurgitate the same thing. But
go on, you can.
I couldn't feel more strongly about the idea that obviously schools should be given as much information about the inspection as possible, including, by the way, when they're going to come and do it. That's a whole nother conversation. That's not even mentioned in this.
Let's come back to that in a second, but let's dive into what you just said, because again, this is why I get so annoyed. This is why it started off with me being frustrated, because it took a backlash for Ofsted to accept that and tighten up this toolkit, because it was going to be quite vague. It was going to be quite wishy-washy, like, oh yeah, maybe kind of like that, kind of, oh, we're going to, oh yeah, we used to do deep dives, we're going to deep dive this, and just make sure you got everything ready for me. It took backlash again from teachers, from educators, for Ofsted to be like, oh yeah, okay, do you know what, we'll give you that. And that's what frustrates me so much, and that's why I get annoyed, because sure, someone, well, they did it, didn't they? I was like, yeah, but they weren't going to. And when people go, oh, teachers always just bloody moaning, aren't they? Well, do you know why? Because this has happened now. This has got more tight. This has become better because of the backlash, because we were like, what are you doing? Give us what we need to know.
What we would like is for this massive body to have a bit of forward thinking themselves, and maybe just be like, oh, do we need people to moan for years for us to think this is can you just think of it? It's your job. This is the one thing you need to do right. It just baffles me. So I think the toolkits thing, no brainer, makes complete sense. Obviously they should be tightened up and released and shared with schools so that it's a positive process. I'm sorry, I'm going off on it again now, but we've mentioned this before. Ofsted's supposed to be about bringing schools up. It's supposed to be a collective action. It's not supposed to be catching schools out. So there was never, ever, ever, ever a reason for this to be so behind closed doors. I remember one year, I think maybe it was when we were having Ofsted, it was labelled as like a leaked document. Leaked document. Ofsted framework leaked. I'm like, what do you mean leaked? Can you show me this so that we can implement all these clearly great things to our school?
You're going to fudge through the inspection. What, the inspection which you've decided are the most important things? They're going to do those most important things.
Yeah.
That bloody
is it
school.
Fudging if you've done it?
Yeah.
It's like, come on. You can't fudge it. It's just completely. Madness. Anyway, number 5 on this list is called Exceptional Won't Need an Ofsted Academy Submission. I had no idea what this was before I read this one. I don't know about you.
Tell me about it.
Ofsted had planned to require inspectors to submit examples of exemplary practice.
Is that outstanding or
no? It's actually exceptional.
Okay, sorry. Of course.
Previously known as outstanding, previously known as awesome.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So it had planned to require inspectors to submit examples of exemplary practice to Ofsted Academy, which is the Watchdog's training and development arm.
Right.
I had no idea this existed, by the way.
Yeah.
Which would then sign off that a top grade could be awarded. So it was like an extra step. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you want to be exemplary? We think we've got evidence for it. We're going to have to submit the evidence.
Right.
Make sure they agree
so
as
more
well.
workload.
More workload, yeah. Send it back. Like I can see the principle of it makes sense. I was like, okay, it makes sense. They're just double checking.
Yeah.
I get it. More heads, you can be really sure. But the plan was dropped because many respondents found it too complex or were worried it would create an additional burden.
Right, that was my first thought.
Which is basically what you were saying.
When you just said that.
Instead, which is what I thought happened anyway, inspectors will evaluate exceptional practice. Not exemplary practice. Exceptional practice in the.
How many words are there for very good?
I know. In the same way as other grades, which, I just thought, well, surely that's what.
Use your toolkit, use your evidence, just do your inspection.
That. So Ofsted said all the strong standards need to be met for an exceptional grade to be considered. If they, so I'm just laughing at the
all these levels.
The changes between exemplary and exceptional. If they are met, inspectors will then look at their evidence against the standards for the top grade.
Okay, so
it makes sense.
I mean, that makes sense, right? and it's a good thing that you won't need that anymore. And again, please, I sound like a broken record, but I'm just going to make the point again. This is another example of something they were going to do, which they're now not. Back when they introduced all of this and said, we were the first ones to be like, what, this is insane. And then people don't moan. And then now they're tracking back again.
Yeah, exactly.
So they obviously know that, they just didn't go far enough and change enough. I still don't think they've gone far enough, by the way. We'll talk about this at the end, but go on, keep going.
Yeah.
What else?
One thing I thought was interesting is the last bit on this point, and I just want to get your thoughts on it, is Ofsted said that exceptional practice needs to be sustained and evident over time rather than a recent improvement, which I thought was really interesting. So you can't be an exemplary school if it's like, this is great, but you've only just sort of implemented it. It has to be sustained and evident over time. It needs to have a transformational impact on the outcomes of disadvantaged youngsters.
Clearly. Do you know what? If I was thinking of what a top level school would be, it would be that it's doing that.
Yeah,
and I quite like that kind of nod towards moving away. It's kind of contradictory because this seems to be moving away from like, we clearly can't tell in 2 days whether you're exemplary or not, but we're still going to try and do it. So we're still going to try and get the impact over time just in a 2-day window. Like, it's the right thing to say, but I just don't think it stands up to a 2-day inspection unless you're expecting schools to have this, bank of evidence of how they've had that sustained impact on disadvantaged kids, which would ramp up the workload for schools, which would then be more of a detriment to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant. I think that is the right way that we should be judging. The best schools in the country are doing that, but I don't really see how that's compatible with the current way that we do inspections.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think for me, it highlighted, how it used to be good and then outstanding. And they were kind of like the ones you wanted, you're either a good school, that was basically the expected standard, or you're outstanding. It's highlighted to me that they have shoehorned in that extra one, where it's the expected standard, strong standard, and then exceptional. I'm like, I can see what they're doing here. They're kind of trying to differentiate a bit more. Like this top whack is really hard to get, and you need to be meeting these like super tough criteria, like really sustained, high impact over time, like really, really making a difference to kids. I imagine what will happen is a lot of outstanding schools will now be strong standard because they're not like, they were considerably better than what was classed as good. There was such a massive gap there between good school and outstanding, where it's like, do you know what? There probably is a middle ground. It does make sense to say, do you know what? This school is just really strong, but they don't have that sustained impact over time. They're not making a transformational impact on their disadvantaged pupils, although they're making a really good impact. And we're going to reserve that for some like genuinely incredible schools that are just doing these unspeakable things, crazy things.
Unspeakable things.
I know, it sounds unspeakable. Such
how could they? No one can know about how great this thing is. I think there's I think it goes both ways though. I can think of a lot of schools that are in the good category, which are much better than other schools in the good category as well. Yeah. So I reckon a bunch of those good schools will probably sneak into that middle ground as well, which would be really good. Look, I don't think, again, on paper, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. I think that that's a good thing to have really high standards, and the top schools only being the top schools if they're having really sustained positive impact, especially on disadvantaged kids. that's all good for me.
Sure.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Can I read the next one to you? And I just want to read like the headline point.
Yeah.
And I just want to get your point of view straight away.
God.
Because this one really sparked my interest. And it's number 6, and it's an extra inspector to ease anxiety for leaders.
What, during an inspection?
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now. I'm not going to give it too much information. Just what does that make you? What do you feel and think straight away when I say they're going to give an extra inspector? Now, if you were normally going to have 2 inspectors, you now get 3, and they've said to ease anxiety for leaders. Just gut feelings.
Okay, my gut feeling there is if I were to think of all the reasons why Ofsted is potentially anxiety inducing for leaders, the number of inspectors in my school wouldn't be on that list, and adding one wouldn't necessarily make it better. Let's see. But thinking about it on the spot here, I can see why that could be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like we said earlier, bad luck, you've got someone who's not in this setting, or bad luck, you've got someone who just thinks on their opinion that it's not great what you're doing. Actually, there's another voice now that might actually back your corner a bit.
What you're saying there is the nuance they're actually providing and saying the reason. It just really made me laugh because on the surface it doesn't sound like a positive, does it?
Yeah.
Don't worry, because in a school setting, we put in the analogy, it's like, don't worry, you're not going to be observed by the just the head teacher today. Today you've got the head teacher and the CEO of the Academy Trust. It's like, can I just have one? I don't want to. I can think.
And your mum's coming in. She's going to watch. Yeah.
Oh, she's going to help.
Yeah, and your dog's in there as well.
Yeah, it's like normally having more people watching it doesn't feel like naturally a good thing. But I do genuinely, I can honestly see the reason. That's it's basically exactly, you nailed it on the head, to be honest with you. I'll read what they put. So Ofsted said it heard concerns raised through consultation about the additional workload that some feared the revised framework could generate and the implications for well-being of the professionals we inspect.
That's absolutely true, and it's nice they've at least said that.
I agree, and we can talk about more about well-being, I think, in a minute. As a result, the watchdog said it was increasing inspection capacity for schools by adding an extra inspector to teams for 1 day of all full inspections. Having this extra inspector should allow the lead inspector more time to focus on engaging with leaders, coordinating their inspection team, and overseeing and quality assuring the inspection, which is basically what you were saying. So last bit, this means we can reduce pressure on leaders through the inspection process. Open for debate, I think. The extra inspector will enable lead inspectors and leaders to really collaborate across the inspection and should ease any anxiety for leaders by acting as a regular point of contact while allowing the wider inspection team the time to gather the evidence.
I think that's good. I think my gut instinct there is that is overall would be a good thing if it plays out like it's been described.
Yeah, exactly that.
Because it still doesn't really solve the problem of who is in your school judging your setting and their experience, etc. But what it clearly does, something can run more smoothly if you have an extra body on board. So I think if it runs the way that's been described and it's more collaborative, because one of the lead inspector can now be more collaborative with the leader rather than trying to do 7 jobs themselves. We've had it ourselves. We've been through Ofsted inspections. We've been maths leads doing deep dives, etc. And that inspector, it was just him, and he was doing everything. And he'd have points where he'd go away and have to type stuff up for 2 hours.
Yep.
And it can be quite isolating, I can imagine, for that inspector, and quite tough. Like, let's just think about that for a second. Like, it can be quite tricky to walk into a school on your own and be like, right, I'm going to judge you in 2 days. I need to do absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So adding that extra person in, I think that's actually really good, because then you can say, right, okay, let's delegate this out a bit. You're a qualified inspector. Why don't you go and walk around with the maths leads, you and I, maybe go and gather some evidence with maths. I'll sit with the leadership team and we'll talk through what maybe we think is important to look at after that. And you can just get more of an idea, I think.
And give people more time a day. Yeah. Because I genuinely think there were points, because we put so much thought and preparation into that Ofsted inspection, there were some times where I was like, do you know what? I kind of wish they'd give me a little bit more time, because I'd put all this effort into trying to display all the great things we do.
You wanted to talk more.
I didn't really get a chance to do some of it. And I was like, he's not really got the full context here. Luckily, we got across what we needed to get across. He's obviously a trained professional, and he was good at what he did, to be fair, this inspector.
Yeah. We had a very positive experience.
Yeah, I had a very positive experience. He was a nice guy. Absolutely, if he had a bit more time, we just would have got across more context.
Yeah, you're right.
And it maybe even would have come out a bit better. I don't know. But so I can see the positives, but totally reliant on Ofsted transforming the entirety of what they do. Like, it needs to be a collaborative, positive process, and it's not that yet. So at the moment, I can see why people might have their gripes with this, because it isn't that yet.
It can be, but it's not consistent.
It can be, yeah, exactly. It's not consistently at all that yet. When it is that, I think this will be genuinely just a really good change.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's it, isn't it? It's like people have that anti-Ofsted thing straight away off the bat. and therefore adding an extra person actually, funnily enough, could increase anxiety in the short term. It has to come alongside everything else that you're saying. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talking about inspections, obviously they're releasing that new framework and everything's changing completely. So inspections are going to restart in November the 10th, but it's going to be only with volunteer schools. So this was interesting, I thought. So
what, the volunteering
hands
bit?
up, hiya, come in and see me, please.
Ofsted, please.
So school inspections will resume from November the 10th. Ofsted have confirmed, which was always in the pipeline, and said this will give providers at least full 2 months to become familiar with the changes. Look, is it a bad thing? No, I think it's good that you give time schools to become familiar. I think now, if it's more clear what the framework is, like they've tightened the toolkit we talked about earlier, it's clearly a good thing. It just seems the timing seems a bit crazy, like how we can start the school year and be a week in and then all this drops. That seems insane to me from a leader's point of view. You'd be a bit like, could you have just done it a month ago? Could we have just timed this a little bit better than when I put everything in place? And I've done a week already with all of my staff, and I've done all my training of my inset days. They're gone now. And now I've got this dropping on new framework.
Yeah, and obviously I want to share it with my school.
Yeah,
like, you're not going to ignore it, are you?
So the 2 month thing's cool, but I don't know. Yeah. So when inspections resume, Ofsted will prioritise volunteers for full inspections in the weeks between November the 10th and Christmas. These inspections will result in a report card with a complete set of grades. Ofsted will then return to the normal schedule for state-funded schools with the full inspection every 4 years, towards the end of the period and not before December the 1st. However, if there are enough volunteers, we will continue to prioritise them after December 1st. We will not carry out inspections in the final week before Christmas. Hallelujah!
Yeah.
There'll be no Ofsted inspector coming to tell me how good my school fare is for Christmas. How great's that Christmas party? Your spread's not great, mate. I'm going to write that up in a contextualised paragraph and you're going to get an exemplary.
I always felt so sorry for those schools where they found out that Ofsted were coming in on the day where they just planned to do it. It's like the last day, and it's like, we're making angels, mate, and we're hanging it up on a hope. Like, and now we've got to cancel this because we have to play the game. You're coming in. Like, I felt so sorry for schools in that position.
Can I just read this editor's note as well? Because it's hilarious to me. Because this is from Schools Week, I said earlier. By the way, again, I'm just going to plug Schools Week. Fantastic resource for journalism for schools. Editor's note. Ofsted publicly discredited a Schools Week story in May that reported the watchdog was considering delaying the rollout of routine report card inspections. However, the plans today reveal the return of routine inspection has been delayed until at least December the 1st and potentially January.
That's such a like burn moment from the editor.
By the way, you said this was wrong, but it was right.
Yeah, they discredited us when we said this thing that they did.
Yeah, I think this delay is a good thing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they were just like, here's a new thing, see you next week?
Yeah, of course it is.
It would never go down well. This is the bare minimum they could do, in my opinion.
The thing I'm latching onto here is, I'm going to read this bit again. If there are enough volunteers, we'll continue to prioritise them after December. I tell you what, if you're thinking about volunteering, do everyone else a solid. Get on that list. Delay those Ofsteds as long as possible for everybody else. Just get yourself on that volunteer list.
I'd love to hear from anyone listening to this, right? Who's in maybe like Ofsted's coming up. I don't know, whatever window they're in, who is genuinely willing to be a volunteer for this. Like, yeah. I'm sure there's some people. Clearly there's going to be.
Schools,
but I just want to be interested to know, like, why? Why would you not just wait and like? Because a lot of, like, previously, like we talked about getting ready for Ofsted visits previously, there'd be a lot of, oh, that school had it and they said this, and this. Yeah. Oh, this school did that. And when they did a deep dive in maths, actually, they really cared about that and they didn't care so much about data, etc. So, like, I feel like from my point of view, selfishly as a school, I'd be like, well, I'm not volunteering. I'll just wait and see how this rolls out.
I can think of one reason. I don't know if it's a particularly great reason, but I imagine some head teachers who are really confident in their school are thinking, like, I want to showcase this, might genuinely look at this and be like, I want to provide better report cards. I just want the parents in my area to see how good this school is. Right. And I think this reporting system is better than the one I've got from 4 years ago.
Yeah, fair.
And I just want to get this new one out so people can get lovely paragraphs about my school and stuff. I think people might be in that position. I think it's probably quite unlikely that they would choose that over what you just said. But you never know.
I feel like, this is, correct if I'm wrong here, but I've always felt like in the schools I've been in, that we kind of have a good idea where we're at as a school. Like we kind of know if we're on the cusp of outstanding-ish, we're good in these places. Yeah. Oh, okay, we're at a certain level where we know that we won't get this judgment, for example. I wonder if those schools who kind of are like, we're in a good place actually. Maybe they're ones are like, do you know what? Staff team, let's put a poll out. Should we just get out of the way? Should we volunteer?
We're going to do well out of this.
Yeah, and if the staff say yes, they're like, then go for it, 100%. And I wouldn't say to someone, definitely don't do it ever. But from my point of view, I'd be waiting.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
Right, Hayden, do you want to read the last point here?
The one I hooked him in for
Yeah,
earlier.
go on.
So see if you can remember what Dylan said earlier, because I can't.
I can't either, so that's good.
No, I can sort of. You'll get it.
It's something about whisper goals.
Probably something like that, yeah. So number 8 is Ofsted explore an area. It's the title of it is called Explore an Area, for those that are just listening and not watching, to provide school context. So the idea here is, as well as providing more contextual information on report cards itself, like we've discussed, Ofsted will introduce a new service called Ofsted Explore an Area.
Ooh.
This will bring together data to show what education provision is like in and around a local area.
Right.
Which I thought, this piqued my interest.
Right move will have their ears pricking up right now.
They will love it. Yeah,
Ooh.
that's so interesting. Yeah, that's hilarious. And explain how the provider's performance sits within its local context.
Wow.
So you were making some point earlier about this being important, about how in different places, different things matter. Like if you're comparing attendance in one school to another completely random other school in the country, it's like, can we really compare those? And the answer is no, of course we can't. And I feel like when I was saying, I think they're doing something about this, I feel like this whole explore an area thing is a bit of a nod to an agreement along the lines of, we know that context is important. Obviously, different areas have different outcomes for lots of reasons.
Grammar school in that Sevenoaks or some part of Kent where it's really affluent is obviously going to have a completely different attendance record to a different place, a different local community in a school where education isn't seen as on a pedestal.
Exactly. And we don't even need to go into the reasons why. We just know that's true. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those things where it's not argue about it. That's true. I like that they're doing this. I'll read a bit more. It says it will replace Ofsted's Area Insights service. They do currently have a service in November and be published publicly.
Okay.
So inspectors will get further training on how to use data as a starting point for understanding context.
Good.
This is good stuff.
Yeah.
The watchdog has also started to develop a similar schools comparison measure to help inspectors and schools understand how schools compare with those in similar contexts.
Okay, so comparing in the same context. I immediately thought the same judgment, and that's circular.
No.
Okay.
No,
right.
So it's like this school has a very similar context and background and area to this other school, and that knowing that genuinely might help you make comparisons and make better judgments.
Completely.
It makes sense to train Ofsted inspectors in that, and also provide it, like it says here, to schools as well. Like, why wouldn't you?
So do you know when people say how, like, you know, the extra detail is a good thing, like when and for parents it's great to have that extra information, etc.
Yeah.
And there might be people out there saying, well, teachers, you asked for this. You asked for extra information and detail and nuance, etc. No, this is what I was talking about.
Right.
This kind of level of extra detail and extra nuance of actually judging schools in a proper way that's fair, and still judging schools and still holding us on a pedestal. This is what I was talking about. And I'd say out of everything so far, when they're changing the word choice or they're adding information for the sake of it, but not actually changing the problems, like we said about experience in the setting of an inspector, and then writing a paragraph about it, I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, great. It's extra information. Well, you asked for it. I know this. Yeah. This is what I meant. Like actual useful ability to compare settings of different schools in different areas doing great things. And the ultimate version of this, which still doesn't feel like it's happened, is then to say, cool, work together. You've got a similar setting. This was fantastic in this school. Instead of berating the rubbish one that I've said is awful, oh, this school was great. Link up.
Yeah.
Oh, how are you battling attendance? Well, we're doing this and it's really working for us. And kids love coming. Nice, let's try that.
Yeah.
That can be Ofsted's role.
And the reason we're going to try that is because Ofsted have helped us identify that you're in a similar context to us, rather than saying, that school up the road's doing better than you.
Yeah.
So, the school up the road's completely different context. So they have a different catchment. Everything's different about it. We can't compare. Why are you doing that just because they're close?
And this is where I'm like, I can see how amazing something like Ofsted could be for education. I can see it. I can see how this independent body could drive standards so much and really help schools. And I'm like, we're getting there. Come on, it's within our grasp. And then they change a word to exemplary and think they're doing something. And I'm just like, oh my God, why? We are so close to this here. And if the only goal we have is to increase standards for our kids and make them better at anything, right? If that's our only goal, that should be what Ofsted's forefront should be. Not just what this looks like for parents clicking, not just what could go on a Rightmove listing of a house because it's in a property. It should be, how can we improve that and raise standards, which is our literal saying, through a really robust inspectorate system where we can compare things and then link up and support. What's the point in all of this? Is if at the end there isn't the support in place to improve and drive standards. It's missing that link. and this is coming full circle to what I was saying earlier about how I'm frustrated by it, because there's lots of little things we can sit and nod and agree or sit and say are pointless. It's all almost futile if at the end of it, it's not, cool, see you later in 4 years. What? No, at the end of it, it should be support, linked together. I care about the kids in my school the same as I care about the kids up in Sunderland.
Yeah.
And I'm not even exaggerating. You might think, well, it's your job. You should care more about your kids. Obviously, I put more time into the kids maybe in my school.
Yeah.
But I fundamentally, the child who happens to be in my class because they live in the postcode that I live in, I care as much about them becoming the best member of society they can and getting the most out of them and enjoying school and getting the best grades as I do from anyone in this country. So if it means that this system supports other places more than my place because my place are getting on, that's a good change for this system, and that's what I want.
Yeah, because what you're saying there about your view on all of the kids being equal, that's harder for a teacher, because you can get drawn into, well, these are my class in front of me. From the government's perspective, from the Ofsted perspective, that should absolutely be their only goal. They should absolutely be thinking, we're trying to support and raise every single child and teacher and every educational establishment in this country. So it kind of brings it back down to, because I think those 8 points are really interesting. And just for clarity, I think overall, they are positive changes, by the way, those
That's
8 changes.
Yeah.
I think overall, I think there was a couple we sort of laughed about, and like the name changes stuff are a bit inconsequential. But like there were a few things there I was like, okay.
It's clearly not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. They've listened to some feedback here, and actually the step they've made is a step in the right direction.
Okay.
You know, I'm very reluctant to say this is all great, because I don't think it is, because the big looming thing is what we said literally right at the start of this, which is like, yeah, okay, this could be really good for parents. But at the end of the day, all of this change started happening really off of the back of Ofsted being slaughtered for being such a negative, anxiety-inducing process. Do you think, with all these changes, let's even just imagine the best possible outcome of all of these things, be really positive. Do you think, as a whole, Ofsted is going to be less anxiety-inducing than it was 3 years ago?
No.
Why?
I just don't think that. And I can sit here and give you my personal opinions. I'll be regurgitating a lot of what I just said. So what I'm going to do instead is just read to you what people in more positions of expertise have said about this.
Go for it.
So a big pushback from this have been about a wellbeing report has been published as well from Ofsted, from the sad story about Ruth Perry, the head who had a bad experience with Ofsted. That's kind of, I feel like what it's just a shame it took that much to kind of kindle this,
it sparked it all off, didn't it?
Kindle
Kindle
reading
the flame,
to spark this kind of discussion. But I'm just going to read this section out to you here. So the changes have not been allied with the union's concerns around this. Ofsted today published the findings of an independent wellbeing impact assessment of its new report cards. So alongside them introducing the report cards, they had an independent body say, okay, cool, can you just judge this for us? A good step.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Of course they should.
Good.
Led by Sinead McBrearty, CEO of mental health and wellbeing charity Education Support. So this is an expert. This isn't just me sat here going, no, bloody Ofsted. This is someone who spent months doing a report.
Yeah, fair.
Staff wellbeing is key to the Ofsted reforms, which were triggered by the death of head teacher Ruth Perry. But the wellbeing report found that the new report cards would actually increase stress and workload for school staff, despite the sector already being among the top 3 industries with high levels of work-related ill health. Paul Whiteman, General Secretary of School Leaders Union, NAHT, said the frankly damning report shows new inspections do not reduce pressures on leaders, repeating calls for the return of inspections to be delayed. Ofsted's plan to push ahead regardless, quote, speaks of an inspectorate that has completely lost the trust of the profession, that has failed to properly listen to teachers and leaders, he added. The watchdog said it has taken wellbeing concerns extremely seriously and nothing in its plans should add to a provider's workload. Can you just say that after the independent report that you commissioned? And I see this all the time, government, they'll commission an independent report.
Yeah.
Ofsted have commissioned an independent report. And when it's said, the independent report has said something that doesn't quite align with them, they've just gone, yeah, I don't agree.
Yeah, but when it does say something that aligns with them, it's the most important document in the world.
Yeah. Like if an independent report from a CEO of a mental health and wellbeing charity that's literally to do with education has looked at all this and said, well, you know what, if anything, it's going to increase anxiety on staff because of X, Y, Z, you have to rethink what you're doing or implement other things that are going to reduce it.
Particularly if I'll say it again, it was sparked by something like the death of Ruth Perry, which ultimately it kind of was the catalyst for this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, if this whole thing, all of this reform was sparked by parents banding together and saying, we just want a better reporting system, I'd almost be like, if that was the primary motive, that's definitely what they're serving. I'm like, I think that's what they're doing. I think they are improving the service that the parents are getting for Ofsted,
and that's part of what Ofsted should do.
Exactly, I do not disagree with that. But when the fundamental start of this was about like the anxiety and pressure it puts on schools,
particularly leaders,
exactly, it is particularly leaders, but to ignore that bit and be like, I don't think it will.
Yeah,
it's like, well, not only there's almost two layers to this. I'm like, it's kind of bad to not make any improvement.
Yeah,
it's particularly bad to make it worse.
Right.
And if the independent body is coming out and saying, I think this might actually be worse in terms of the anxiety and pressure it puts on schools for these reasons, and I'm not going to go into them, but there is like a whole document.
Look at the Wellbeing report.
The Wellbeing report, and even Schools Week. We keep bringing these up. They've done a really nice separate article that just goes through all that as well. Go and read it. I'm like, if they've said that, you probably should take it seriously. But it just leads me to the question, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this right now in my head, and maybe we can hash it out between us. But what is the alternative? Like, what does everyone want? Because I can imagine Ofsted as sort of being like, we need to keep schools accountable. We've tried to think of a different way of doing it. We've scrapped the overall judgments because they were clearly one of the worst things. Like, we do need to keep schools accountable. Yeah. What do you want from us?
Yeah, completely. And I think that's something we have to all work together to work towards. I think so if you look at what's actually changed, this is why I push back a little bit when, in my head, I do push back a bit when you say, I think these are positive things. I'm like, okay, for what they are, maybe for serving a different purpose, maybe they're positive things. But from my point of view, I'm looking at this very much from a school's lens. Okay, this increases the number of categories that the school's being judged on. It adds extra detail for every single category because there's going to be a paragraph written in detail about it.
Yeah.
I can't see I can't see this being rolled out in schools where that doesn't increase workload, that doesn't increase anxiety, that doesn't increase worry. Because now instead of worrying about 4 things, you're worrying about 6 things.
Yeah.
Now instead of, like I said earlier, imagine your teaching's bad. Oh God, the teaching's got to be really good. The staff are going to get it in the neck, potentially, from leaders. Oh, leadership's bad. Oh, I'm already stressed. I'm a leader. My goodness me. And now I'm being told I'm still awful. Every single part of why leaders were feeling anxious before is still in this current system and being exacerbated. Because you're still being judged individually at the end of the day on these high stakes ways of coming in and saying, no, it's causing concern or urgent improvement or whatever it might be. That's going to have the same impact because it's still just as high stakes. And if things go wrong, until we fix what happens after inspections, I don't see how this is going to change anything whatsoever. If a school's in urgent measures, if the same thing happens as before, it's just called something different. We need to really step up our actual support for schools. And we need to really step up the point of Ofsted and have fundamental changes as to what they literally do. And if their forefront of their mind becomes support and help instead of judgment and pointing fingers, that's the change I want to see. Whereas what I see here is it's still judging, it's still pointing fingers. It's just got a new fancy word at the front. It's just got a nice little Nando's card instead at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's actually, we're gonna judge and point fingers still, but we'll tell you why. We'll write a little paragraph at the end saying why it's so bad or why it's awful.
Yeah.
Look, I think leadership is such a tricky job. I think it's so hard, and amazing leaders out there genuinely inspire me. And it's very easy for us to sit here and be like, yeah, that's awful because you're exploiting your staff, and talk about all the toxic stories of things I do think are bad. Amazing leaders must look at this and go, oh,
yeah,
it's just actually increased my workload.
Yep.
It's just made me worry about more things. It's just giving something else an extra chance to go wrong. And fundamentally, no matter what you think about Ofsted or what they should do, that's clearly to me a bad change.
Yeah, they shouldn't be left feeling like that. I couldn't agree more. And I do often think when we're in this context, I do think of Ruth Perry, and I do think of all of the other head teachers and leaders that have been left in a horrible way, in all honesty, like feeling terrible and anxious and awful about an upcoming Ofsted inspection or a previous one. And I do agree. I think if Ofsted just shift their lens a bit to think first, like how could we still deliver this school feedback that they need, because they have to be accountable. Like even you said, oh no, the teaching's bad, I'm going to worry about that now. I'm sort of like, the other part of me is like, yeah, do you know if the teaching's bad, they need to be told. So
Sure.
that's the point of accountability. Yeah, teaching's bad. It's never going to be nice to told that you're doing something bad.
For sure.
But you got to be told it. So
yeah, but it can be supportive.
Exactly.
It can be a longer journey.
Exactly.
Rather than every 4 years having 2 days.
Yeah.
They even said themselves, just going back to it, sorry, they even said themselves on the top level, you can only get the top level if it's sustained over time. And I'm like, that's how you judge a school anyway. It's sustained over time.
Exactly,
you can't possibly do a snapshot judgment of a school in just a 2-day visit. You can't do it. You are assuming a lot. And you are taking on face value what people say a lot. And that makes it really high stakes. And that makes it a bad system that's going to be full of anxiety-inducing parts. Because if you as a leader think, oh gosh, my maths lead won't get across all these things we do in that 10-minute chunk of time they have to get across all these things we do, it doesn't matter if we do them or not.
Yeah.
What matters is if in that snapshot, the inspector thinks we do them. And that's why the system's flawed. And this doesn't fix that.
No.
This doesn't change that whatsoever. So that's going to continue to be anxiety-inducing for leaders with more points that could possibly go wrong.
Yeah.
So until it changes to a long-term, sustained, yes, accountability, but also support, I think have to come in equal measure. Because what's the point in being accountable if you're not helping them get there? It's a circle to me. And I think that's where this can be fundamentally fixed. And we have to go from the ground up. This is patchwork. This is like, okay, cool. Yeah, we can make it great for parents and right move. Cool. But the system's the same. It's broken. It doesn't actually fundamentally do what it's set out to do. And it's going to continue to be anxiety inducing.
Raising standards in schools.
No, causing anxiety and not helping. It needs a rethink, fundamental rethink. And again, this is not that. It's just the same thing, different words, different scale, same thing.
I think they've made some changes. Cool, crack on. Leave that. Those changes are done now. Lovely. Yeah, maybe it's better for parents. I think the next step for Ofsted, because they're obviously listening, is to do it. I think you nailed it on the head. By the way, I couldn't put it into better words. I'll never tell you that again. But the next step for Ofsted, then, in my opinion, is working on that part. Is working on, okay, we are supposed to be transforming schools for the better. What are we now going to put in place? What policies? Yeah, look, we've added extra inspectors to your inspections. Great, cool. What are you going to do on the bigger level now? Fundamentally, to make the inspection more of a positive process. And again, it's outside the box, isn't it? Like we said before, they've just taken the box and like moved it around a bit, just relabeled it. Think outside the box, Ofsted. Come on, think of some new strategies and new things. If it's about sustained impact, like Dylan mentioned, okay, what are you going to do for that? Because you're coming every 4 years.
Right.
Tackle that problem then.
Yeah.
That's your next step. Tackle those problems because you're not tackling them yet. And it's got to be a better collaborative process. And it can be. I'm sure there's plenty of experts out there who, if you put them in a room for a week, they could probably think of some really, really, really good ways to do that. But you've got to then actually try and implement them. This is all great. Cool. Thank you for making some changes and listening to us a little bit on some things. But come on, you're missing the fundamentals here.
Completely agree. And one thing Ofsted could do, get all their inspectors when they're training to give us a review on Spotify.
Yeah, you were really listening. I was really intently listening.
They give us a review on whatever platform that the listeners are on right now. It really helps us. You can share this. And I think, honestly, this is one episode where I will say to you, please do share this episode with anyone who works in a school because they can get a real insight into what's changing with Ofsted and really, give us a review as well.
I want to know your thoughts as well because it's one of those things where me and Dylan will say we'll talk about it, but we'll often form more opinions after. We'll talk more after it and stuff. And
I won't. I'll form my opinion.
Dylan won't, obviously, because he knows everything. Yeah. But other people will write in and say, "Oh, did you think about this?" And we'll, "Oh, yeah, that's such an interesting way to think about one of these things." Please get in touch. We love it. We love hearing from you guys.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again next time for another episode.
Yeah. See you then.